I'm in Shaoxing, China right now. We came here because my husband is from here, and we brought our two kids to celebrate Chinese New Year with his family. Also, we're here to celebrate our daughter's 7th birthday. As we prepared to come here, I found out my husband's not the only one that counts this as his hometown. There's a famous Chinese writer that was also from Shaoxing, and that is Lu Xun. When I found out about this, I decided I need to learn more about him because he's very famous in China. And so I got this book from Penguin Classics that includes probably most, if not all, of his short stories and one novella. And in the beginning, of course, it has an introduction to him, to the times that he lived in, some of his struggles, and just the context of things going on around him during his life. To give you a little bio about Lu Xun, he was born, as I said, here in Shaoxing in 1881. He died in Shanghai in 1936. Here in Shaoxing, there are many monuments to him. There is a museum. There is his original school that he attended as a child and his home that he lived in as a child. So there are all kinds of things you can go and see and learn more about him here. When he was a child, he was in a very old-fashioned, Orthodox Confucian kind of society. He had to take a path initially that was in keeping with that society. And around 1899, he decided he was not going to follow through with that. And against the advice of some of his family, he decided to go to Nanjing and study Western medicine and science, and also absorb himself into translated literature from all over the world. Eventually, he went to school in Japan, studied Japanese, among other things, and then came back to China. And he decided to abandon a career in medicine, and he felt like he could have more of an impact writing, which I think is so remarkable and inspiring. Just a few notes on his writing style, because he definitely has a clear style that permeates all of his writing that I've read so far. So he's almost always talking in some way about the lives of average, real people and their daily lives and what they encounter, their troubles, their difficulties, and their successes. He also typically writes with a very biting, sometimes satire of the culture of his childhood and of the early 20th century. Often he would use allegory or symbolism in his stories to really just deliver his real message to his reader. As I mentioned, I started reading his stories before we left to come to Shaoxing, and I've been reading them since we've been here. And some of my favorite stories include the first one I read, Diary of a Madman. The story follows a man that's been declared insane or mad or having suffered from a mental breakdown. But this man is convinced he is not mad, but everyone around him is a cannibal. Everyone in society, they're all cannibals. At first, before knowing more about Lu Xun's work, when I first read it, I was getting like so many Edgar Allan Poe vibes. And I still kind of do with that one. But after having read more, I see those common threads in that story that he has in many of his others. It was more a critique on society and how the society is almost cannibalistic in consuming the average people that lived in it. Then we have Kong Yiji. This story is about a scholar that failed at that trajectory that he was on, and he became destitute. He was kind of a laughingstock in the area where he existed. He was poor, destitute, struggling, and everyone made fun of him, the butt of everyone's joke. Interestingly, he's somewhat of a folk hero, I feel like, here, because there are statues of this character in Shaoxing. Another favorite that I read is The New Year's Sacrifice. This one was about a woman's tragic fate in a patriarchal society. I want you to think for a moment, at this time when this was written, how many authors or writers were focusing on the patriarchy of their society. And then there's a novella that maybe it's his most famous work, I'm guessing, A True Story of Ah Q. This focuses on a man who's so deluded, his low social status, it couldn't be any lower in the society that he lives in. But somehow he's deluded himself, no matter how many bad things happen to him, no matter what misfortune goes on in his life, he convinces himself somehow that he's actually above the actual lowly status that he is actually in. I'm making this video because I feel like I learned so much, and I wish I would have known about Lu Xun before actually preparing to come to his hometown. Do you know anything about Lu Xun? Do you have any thoughts or comments about anything I just said? Let's talk about all that in the comments.